Mild-mannered financial clerk Graham Krakowski buys a rundown starter home only to discover a vagrant living in the empty lot across the street, who keeps appearing inside. Attempts to remove the homeless man lead to a feud that spirals out of control and tests Graham's sanity as the vagrant enrages him in twisted games, defiling his home and framing him for gruesome murders. The Vagrant stars Bill Paxton, and one of the few times that he gets a chance to have a leading role, he really goes all out. He was a perfect choice for this. Vagrant is directed by Chris Wallace, who is famous for doing the special practical effects of movies like The Gremlin and The Fly. Now, The Vagrant is considered a cult classic. It didn't have a deep theatrical run when it came out in the 90s. Found its audience on home video, and it found me on home video this week. I had never heard of this film, but it had me at Bill Paxton. We also have Michael Ironside showing up here as a detective. Marshall Bell plays the vagrant, and he's in full makeup as the homeless vagrant. Basically, Graham buys his starter home, and he can't keep this vagrant out. And the vagrant becomes so attached to his psyche and gets into the mind of Graham that we really get a sense of paranoia. So much so, he changes his security system. He builds a fence outside his home. The whole perimeter is fenced in, and he puts guardrails on his windows. Then he has his girlfriend over.
You're acting like a maniac.
Anyway, his girlfriend ends up dumping him because Graham is so paranoid at this point. And he lets the vagrant take over his whole world instead of like trying to sell the home early on and get your money back like his friend suggests in the film. No, Graham rides it out to the point of paranoia and insanity.
What could you possibly see?
And he ends up losing a lot of his money and is framed for several brutal killings. And do I mean they are brutal? They are brutal. And again, it goes back to the special practical effects that are fantastic. I mean, you have bodies showing up in refrigerators and on the street and in different multiple areas. And at one point I was wondering, is the vagrant even real? Or is it just kind of in his mind? And a little bit of both. I mean, he's definitely real, but the paranoia and the control that the vagrant has over Graham is what the vagrant's motives are, as we find out later in the film. So yeah, I'd highly recommend The Vagrant. Really enjoyed it. Had a great time with it. If you're looking for 90s dark comedy. It's also produced by Mel Brooks, so there you go, comedy. But yeah, let's get into the Arrow edition here. This is the alternate artwork, commissioned artwork of The Vagrant on front. But I chose to go with we have a disc, a nice booklet, the retro, and then the new. Great special features here. There's several interviews that I want to touch on real quick. First of all, this is a new 2K restoration from the original negative, and it looks fantastic. Vagrant Memories, a new interview with director Chris Wallace. He talks about the struggles they had budget-wise. He talks about the different stuff that maybe he would have done differently, and then gives a nice tribute to Bill Paxton. And then we have You Were in Hell, a new interview with actor Marshall Bell, who played the vagrant. Talks about being in makeup for most of the shoot, what that was like, how long it took to put on. Gives a little insight into what he was thinking as the vagrant. And then he talks about Bill Paxton again. And then Barfus Homicide, a new interview with Michael Ironside, the detective. And Michael Ironside gives a nice tribute to Bill Paxton, and he talks about some of the stuff they did on the outside of the... He talks about some of the stuff they did on the side, outside the shoot, and how great Bill Paxton was as a person. And then we have another interview with Colleen Camp, and she does the same thing. Everybody's echoing the great Bill Paxton. And I gotta say, he's definitely missed, and this is one of the films that you get to see his wide range of acting. The Vagrant is definitely one, if you're a Bill Paxton fan, a must-see. But if you're a fan of horror comedy, I recommend it as well. But, again, it's not for everybody, but I thoroughly enjoyed The Vagrant. Let me know in the comments what you thought of The Vagrant. And as always, this is Return of the Disc. I'm Dan. For more Return of the Disc, visit returnofthedisc.com. Check out the audio version of today's show, available on all major podcast platforms. And be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel.